All right, so let me start with my introduction. My name is Kautilya Prasad. I'm the director of Sitecore Commerce practice at Exenium. I've been in this industry for around 14 years now, 14 almost, going to 15B. And for the past 5 years, I'm mostly working in e-commerce projects with Sitecore Commerce, Inside Commerce, or maybe custom. And I'm also Sitecore Commerce MVP. With that said, I welcome you to my session here, which is I'll be talking about the buy online, pick up in store, how to actually implement with Sitecore Commerce. We'll see how we can do it with many different ways. What's the best way to go ahead and of course there'll be like very specific requirements for the project, but it gives you a bit of framework how you can think about adding your custom logic in this. So let me start with number one, like what is actually buy online pick up in store, as people say BOPIS. So it's actually a fulfillment of type pickup where the customer is actually going to pick it up. I'm sure you have used it a lot of times, especially since last March. You order online, you go and check in and just pick up your items. Or there are alternate variations of it, which is a curbside pickup, where you go and call the shop, they bring the items to your car. And the third variation of this is called reserve and pay store. Not very common right now, but some industry it's very common because not everyone wants to pay online and they want to pay in store with checks because the amount is too high to be paid by credit card. So that's another way of just fulfillment of type pickup. But here, the number one and two is really you're paying online and picking it up after you pay online. Number three here is you pay and pick up in the store. So those are the variations of buy online, pick up in store. And then in the end, it's really fulfillment that is a different way of fulfilling the product to the customer. And feel free, if you have any questions, please post it in the chat. I'll answer it right away. Okay, so what are my options here? How do I implement buy online, pick up in store? Number one is if you have lots of investment already done in your stores, warehouse, and showrooms, you might already have an ERP dealing with your showroom inventory and showroom orders, which you can leverage. So that's the part where you don't need the storefront to handle your all the logic for buy online, pick up in store. But then not everyone is ready with that, especially when the pandemic hit and we're not going in store to purchase. Not everyone could leverage this ERP or Dynamics, anything that that could accelerate or make it easy, add a workflow to it. So what people actually asked for, can it be as easy as sending an email to the store and they respond with yes or no, they're available, and then the storefront responds with it. So that's one of the option. So that storefront can actually create the workflow for the store, and depend on their notification, it can actually notify the customers and change the order statuses. Number three is hybrid, where you offload some part to the stores, manage like actual inventory to the store, and then you still have the storefront for your workflow order management. So that's a hybrid, but then it really depends on what the appetite of your client is. And given we'll actually go ahead with option number two here. Let's see how we can go ahead with implementing BOPIS with Sitecore Commerce Storefront. Okay. Oh, why rodeo? Yes. So what does the storefront need to actually have, or store, to actually, so that it can enable buy online, pick up in store? Number one, you need to understand where is your inventory? How many stores are there? Where are they located? Directions. What is the inventory per product in each store? And what's the window of pickup? How much lead time do the stores need to actually respond and be ready with the order? That's number one. You need to have that in place, or maybe it may be a CMS field where you actually manually enter it if it's not a large scale thing. And I'm talking about small scale clients here who do not have anything ready right now. Long term, they may have everything streamlined. If you want to start right now, what else do you need? You need to have a way to actually confirm the order with the store before notifying the customer. I may be placing order now, and I say, okay, I want to buy 5 of these, but the store also need to have 5 of that. So the store needs to confirm, yes, I have it. Then only you will notify that the order is ready for pickup. And then obviously, when you're there to pick up your product, you may not want to go inside the store. You have to give an option to check in that notifies the store, and the store comes out and gives you the actual product. So these are some of the things your store absolutely needs to have if you're implementing buy online pickup in store using the storefront. Then each of these I'll explain later what role it plays, but then for a very streamlined user experience, the user shouldn't know where and what is happening, of course. So for all that, these are the things that are important. Okay. Okay, now coming to the storefront, a PDP, what will a PDP look like? So when you're actually on a product details page, you would want to see where are the nearby stores. Like if you look at this example, it's actually showing pick up at this store, pick up at this store. And additionally, what also can be shown here is 20 available at this store, 100 available at this store. So you can decide how much you want. Online, it's not available. So what needs to happen is to store this information here. This is a store, Broadway store is a store. You need to have its longitude, latitude so that people can view direction to the store using Google Maps. Then you have the address and hours of operation. Then how much time does it need to actually prepare the pickup order to confirm whether it's available or not. And obviously, after you have all that, you need to sync. You may not enter this into Sitecore directly or Commerce directly. You will have this information maintained somewhere, maybe a Content Hub, or someone starting just now, maybe an Excel, and then sync it into the CMS so that it's at one place. And it can be actually sent by email to different people, and one consolidated directs everything. So you could sync it every day, every 6 hours, the store information as and when you add new warehouses. Ideally, all this information will be in your Dynamics or your ERP. But then again, we're talking about if you just go ahead right now, how will you do it? So adding this information, it syncs to Sitecore somehow. You show on PDP, and then you show the availability as well. And when I'm adding to cart here, what needs to happen is actually this add to cart needs to send this store information as well. Which store is this actually being added to cart for? So that during the checkout, this becomes my store for pickup. And there are obviously some complex scenarios. You add one for this cart, another product to another store. So you will actually break your orders into multiple sub orders, and each one goes to this store. Okay, moving on. What do we need to do with the inventory? For those who are not aware of Sitecore Commerce, how it stores the inventory, it's in a JSON, and each product has an inventory information as a entity where there's a quantity, and then there's a price, and then there's variant information. So all that. What needs to happen is this very entity needs to be extended to store, what is the inventory per warehouse or per showroom or per store, so that when you're showing online here, you can show the availability as well. Which store has what amount of item available, this particular item. So this is the first step in showing the actually the inventory per store. And then I've seen these questions a lot of times. What happens if I buy online, but when I go to the store, it's not available? So obviously there's a lot of things missing there. You go online, you need to wait for the pickup confirmation, then you go. But what happens if the confirmation doesn't come and you get a denial? It's not available. To avoid all the scenarios, you should have a threshold of for each store, what's the threshold inventory quantity that you would show some on the PDP, like going fast or pick up this soon, so that the customers knows this is may not be available when I'm ordering, or when it may not be available when I'm actually expecting it. So messaging is really important to the customer. Each store should have its own inventory threshold to basically tell if it's less than 10, show a message here, going fast, hurry, or something like that, so that the customer knows it may not be available, or add a message, item may not be confirmed until you check in within 4 hours or 5 hours, something like that. So that's mostly for the customer messaging. They understand the alerts you see on the page, that the expectation is set, okay, may not be available, but it may be available in this store. This is as 100, it may be 2 miles away, something like that. So that's important aspect of actually engaging the customer, letting them know what and where the inventory is going fast, where it's not. And coming back, like what happens is, like it's a high demand item, like people are going to the store and buying it while you're also purchasing online. Then you have to actually raise the threshold to as high as you want, because that has to be coordinated with the store and actually the product. So that has to be a manual thing done before you're running a campaign or something. Set the threshold to high so that everyone is aware that it's not reserved yet until you get a notification. And I've seen this requirement that some websites say if it's less than maybe 10 or 15, hide it from the store, because the store wants to actually keep it for high profile, their loyal customers in the store. So that's about the inventory. Obviously, so it will be per store, and there will be inventory for the online. Like right now you see 0 item in stock. There should be some reserved for online orders, which is shipped to you, not actually picked up. So those would be another entry here, because it really depends on what your strategy is. But usually people have asked me, like, what is the best way to keep it online, keep the online inventory separate than the store. And this is the best way to go. You have to add components here and store inventory per store, and allocate inventory for the online orders as well, online shipping orders. Okay, now important thing here, one more thing is, when you're actually submitting the order, you have to reduce the inventory count for that particular store, not the online one, because you're purchasing from the store directly. And it may happen that the store denies it, then you know that you have to make it 0. When the notification came in from the store, we don't have it available, you will change that quantity to 0 for that store, so that no one else gets that order. Okay, what happens during the checkout and submit? So you need to store specific orders during the order, review and add to cart, and when it's actually being checked out. You need to have alternate pickup person information so that someone else can go and pick. These are very standard, practice that everyone follows. You need to give your preference of pickup. Do you want it today, tomorrow? So you may be placing order today, but you want it tomorrow. So the store will go ahead and remove it from the shelf for you today, so that you can come and pick it up tomorrow. And of course, which store you're going to, this where you want your notifications to go. So these are like the bare minimum you need to store on the orders, and it's actually a component that stores all this information. And what happens on the review and order confirmation? Obviously, we talked about disclaimer for inventory. Like if you're purchasing something where the inventory is within the threshold limit, you need to alert the customers. Give them appropriate alerts that do not go to the store until you get notification. Items may not be fulfilled, things like that. Of course, and then pickup instructions. Each store may have its own pickup instructions. Some store may want you to come in, some may want you to call. So it depends how each store wants to actually deal with the orders, pickup in-store orders. And then this is the biggest one. Order is added to a workflow. When the order is submitted in the Sitecore Commerce engine database, it's actually a workflow that starts from there. Workflow can be managed by Minions or Sitecore workflow, or an Azure Logic apps. There are various ways you can manage your workflows, but for this session, let's see how we can do it with the minion, because that's minion is comes out of the box with the Sitecore Commerce. You can create your own minion to actually track when a notification comes from the store and how you want to deal with it. It could be email, SMS, anything. And that's why it's very important to understand that the order submission is the easiest part of the buy online pickup in store. What happens after that is actually make you loyal customers. If they are kept informed, the customers are kept informed, and they know when to go, where to go. Pickup instructions are clear. Check-in, they have an option to check in. That's what gonna make them loyal to the brand. Okay, moving on. Most important step is confirm store. So the store receives the order. I'll talk about it later how the workflow will happen, but the store receives the order, maybe email, maybe an API call, or maybe an FTP drop somewhere, which they are monitoring. But they receive the order, they have to actually reserve the items and remove from shelf so that no one can purchase. And then once they're ready, they know what they have the order in hand. They'll confirm the availability again back to the storefront, which could be again an API call, a custom, something similar, a simple email as confirmed to the order confirmation, or a FTP file drop. In case of partial availability, this thing is actually going to notify the AP. That responsibility should be on the storefront to notify the customer that some items are not available before they actually go and send a notification for ready for pickup. Because I may be purchasing a lot of things which are a part of a project. Let's say 5 of this color, 4 of the other color, a brush, but if the brush is not available, I don't want to go ahead with the full order. So it's important that if it's partially available, you need to actually get a confirmation from the user, customer, that yes, I still want to go ahead, because it happens sometimes, even personally, that I ordered 5 things, got only 4, but the most critical item was not there. So I had to go and return it. Okay, notifications. It's also, I would say, the best way to keep customer informed. It's like keep them notified. Where is their order? Are they going to get it today, tomorrow? If it's ready to be picked up, or items are not available, partially available. Again, for all these can be done via the minions. Minions can call APIs to send notification, but the decision maker can be minions here if you're going for Sitecore Storefront. The same can be achieved by logic apps, and there are different items you can use for notification, but vanilla Sitecore Commerce can achieve this with minions as well. Okay, now this is another thing. This is actually, I've had personal situation here. I did not get the confirmation sometimes, but it was too late. It went past my order delivery date. I had to actually call the store and ask what's happening. So it's important for me to be notified as a customer. So the actual storefront needs to be aware where the actual order is, what's the current state. I need to inform the customer. So store sends the order update to the storefront. How can we achieve that? Actually, the last project that I worked on, it was as simple as an email. Store just sent an email to a particular account with a particular subject name and the order ID and say ready, order number. And that's how the minion looked at that and just converted the order status to ready for pickup. That sent a notification to the user. The other option is via FTP. It could be a file drop. It could be a CSV or Excel that is being dropped at some place. And minion looks at that every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then it actually changes the order status to ready for pickup or maybe not available. So the actual notification logic is encapsulated in the minion, but minion is also listening to all these events, maybe FTP, email, or API call that triggers something. Okay. Another thing with Sitecore Commerce is you can actually write a policy to tell what are the valid order statuses in the system. Because out of the box, if you just try to submit an order and change its status to unavailable, it will error out. It will say it's not a valid order status. It's not. This is not a valid order status. So there's a policy, order status policy, which you can actually add all the statuses to, so that the minions will not error out. So these are the statuses that are possible. Submitted right after the order submit. Unavailable when the store says it's not available. Ready for pickup when the store says, yeah, it's all packed up, ready for pickup, removed from the shelf. Checked in is when someone is actually checking in using the app, or just a browser somewhere. You give a API call to just check in and notify the store. That's it. You check it in. And picked up when the store sends the information, it has been picked up, fulfilled, and the customer came in and the order is picked up. Not picked up is actually as important as picked up, because sometimes there's a no-show. It may be due to some emergency issues, or it may be someone forgot. So you have to have a window until when it's ready for pickup, and then you have to actually change it to not picked up and remove, return the inventory and basically notify the customer that it was not picked up. It could, if it's so, different brands have different policies here. If it's perishable, of course they will charge for it. If it's not, they have the option to return back the inventory to the actual store. So these are the different order statuses, but of course these would change based on the requirements you're working with. But these, I will actually have a workflow later. I'll show you how these order statuses change. Okay, now coming to how we are going to implement this. So basically, you need to have two minions running. One is to read the newly submitted orders, check if it's a buy online, pickup in store. And if it's buy online, pickup in store, you push as a file drop or email, or maybe send a notification to the API somehow. So that minion is responsible for checking the order submitted, whatever is submitted right now, check if it's buy online, pickup in store, and just send the information there. For email, actually, what we implemented, right? So if you go back here, so the store information that we're talking about, address, hours, here, the part of actually contact information will also be stored on the store. So depending on what store you add to cart for, we'll actually store the email address or an SMS of the store, and we will send the order notification there that the new order ready for confirm, something like that here. And then the minion changes the order status to pending confirmation from store, because that's after that it's another action that needs to be taken by store. It's just listening every 5 minutes or 10 minutes for updates on the order, and that is this minion. What happens in the other minion is it's going to listen for order updates. Again, it may be an FTP location, listen to an email account, or just an API exposed. Depends on what you want, which way you want to go forward. But this minion will take it from here. Pending confirmation from store. Okay, wait for maybe 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever you configure, and then listen to the FTP folder. If it's ready, if the FTP folder has that information that this is the order number, this is the status, and it's ready for pickup, the order status change for ready for pickup. If it says not available, change status there. If it's and the same minion will actually tell you that, oh, it has been picked up. So this FTP location works in like it's a file drop. Every update comes here. Yeah. And then the email, which we actually implemented, was you get an email account for each store, and then we receive updates from that store. So let's say for order number A, I have sent it to store ABC. I know that I'm expecting a response from ABC at google.com. So that way you can map this to the actual status and the order, and see, okay, what is this? Is it ready for pickup? Not available. Because all we care is if it's ready, not available, or partially available at that point. And what happens is each of these status will actually send a notification to the customer based on what ready for pickup. Okay, send the ready for pickup notification. Not available, send this notification. This is when you actually pick up. You receive and they said, okay, you have picked up this item at this time from this store. So it's really the minions, 2 minions taking care of everything here. Okay. Now, let's see the workflow here. Okay. Order submit. I mean, it's the storefront job is to submit the order with the information to, with all the buy online pickup in store information component, which will have actually the store submitted for and time, date of pickup, and the product and the quantity. Now, once this is submitted in the Sitecore database, a minion is actually responsible. The one we saw before, this minion is actually responsible for reading the newly submitted orders. If it's not a buy online pickup in store, the regular flow takes, everything is as usual here. Nothing. They'll go to the OMS and it will be shipped. Maybe digital fulfillment. Minion will actually say if it's yes, it's a buy online pickup in store. Send order to minion. Send order to store via minion. So this is actually, what we talked about is either the FTP or email or API call. So this step, and then you wait for confirmation as the file has been dropped, email has been delivered, or the API return status code 200. You change to order status. Yeah, pending confirmation from store. Again, the minion is responsible for it. Now, this is waiting for confirmation. That's it. And the minion keeps on running every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, whatever you configure. And we'll look for that email or API call or, the FTP location. Keep scanning it like a, file watcher. And if it's confirmed, we receive the file or email or API. If it's confirmed, yes, we'll have a different flow. But if it's not confirmed, notify the customer, not available for pickup, not ready for pickup, order canceled kind of thing. Now comes here, it's confirmed, another set of steps happen. This is the other minion that we talked about. Change order status to ready for pickup because the store has confirmed. Notify customer, and the customer email goes to the customer, they're ready to pick up. And again, this waiting time here is same as this because the file drop or email or API will come that hasn't picked up, and you will actually say, yes, it has been picked up. Then that's where the workflow ends for this order submitted. But if it's not picked up, after a window, like we said, you got to return to store and basically notify the customer. So this is like, the very high level flow. And what I've done is here with minions, you can actually achieve this with logic apps, or any other thing you want to, configure the workflow with. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, I do want to talk about some of maintenance tips and tricks with commerce. So, and some of these have to be actually taught from day one because it's very fundamental change in how you store your data. Journals, let me give you an explanation about journals too. So each entity in Sitecore Commerce, be it orders, catalog, price, inventory, you can assign journaling to it because anytime that entity changes, like order or inventory, it makes a copy of it and adds a journal entry. Let's say, okay, this was changed at this time by this person, and this is the old value, this is the new value. So what happens with that is you imagine if journaling is enabled for this flow. So order submitted, journal was not created, so because it's just submitted. Any change on this order will create a journaling. So you have an entity journal here, entity journal here, entity journal here. 3 3 copies of the same order. So if you really need to have audit history, then only you can start journaling the entities. But if you don't need it, all it is going to do is increase your database size. And recently I've seen that the journal entry size was around 300 GB for a system where you could allow updates from, maybe it could be a tracking update, maybe it could be an item update, or maybe it's just, sync, like order status has changed to confirmed or picked up or fulfilled. That's also creating the journal. So that's really important to have. Do you want to enable this? Because the consequence of this is large. You will pay more. It's very easy for you to maybe reach 500 GB of data on cloud, and then with Elastic Pool, there's cost to it as well. So either you disable it from day one, or you have a job that removes old journals from the system, maybe a month-old journal, 2 months old journal. That's more on like database performance as well. If you have journals, each journal entry adds data to the commerce list, commerce entities table as well. So you have more data to deal with, and the performance degrades if you don't clean up your journals. With Sitecore Commerce 9.2, I think 2 and above, this is disabled by default, but all before the version have it enabled on order. So even though you don't know, these are being actually journal entry is being done for your order systems in production, and your database size is increasing. Okay, sharding. This is very fundamental. This has to be done before you actually get your first order or create your first entity. Sharding is basically horizontally partitioning your data so that one database or one table doesn't grow too long. You could shard it based on regular expression. That's what is actually it's actually supported by Sitecore Commerce. You have orders going into a separate table, you have list going into a separate table, and then you have cards going into a separate table, membership goes into a separate table. How is it possible? Because each of them has a sharding policy in the system. So if you imagine that you're creating a custom entity that's like maybe recommendations or something like that, that's going to increase the size of database or one table, and it's going to impact the performance at the sharding from day one, because it's really difficult to move data once it's in the table, and then you add a sharding policy, then it will only go to the new table. It won't combine from the other table because there was no sharding policy before. So things like this can really improve your performance if you know from day one, like where is your entity going. It could be right now the cards are going to the actually commerce entities table. You could actually define a new table for it, and it can add a sharding logic and it will go there. So that's mostly, the performance is also improving for sharding due to sharding. And it's a best practice if you know that if you have lots of data going in one table, you might just partition it based on some type, maybe entity type, entity name. And coming to the next one, where you have cleanup promos. Why is this important? Because you may have a lot of promos that are not used. Someone may have created for test. Maybe they are not active anymore. What happens is during the cart calculations, all the promos are read into memory. All the promos are read into memory so that the calculate cart pipelines can effectively work in memory with the promos. And the first hit, like if you're starting your commerce engine for the first time, the first hit is actually goes to database and gets all your promos. And so if you have a huge database, huge number of promos, it will load everything, even though you don't need it. So that's if you are not using any promos, maybe which are older than 6 months, or maybe 3 months, you decide what time you want, delete it from the database, because all it's doing there is adding to database and adding to calculate cart line logic. I know it filters based on the date start and date end, but it's in memory. It's not before loading in memory. So it's still in memory. And then on the same lines, we have coupons. You may be you may create coupons for some campaigns which are not running anymore. Maybe you created 6 months ago, 7 months ago. All it is doing is taking up space in database, taking up memory when coupon logic is being executed. So cleanups like these help improve the performance of the system overall. You're reducing space in database, you're improving in-memory performance. And then the next one is price cards. Also, you could have a price card for, let's say, February, March, April, May, June, or maybe some condition you have. Maybe you created one last year, you don't need it anymore. It's deactivated because of date time, start and end date, but it's still sitting there. So if you just clean up these data, you are going to gain a lot of performance and space optimization. So yeah, you can actually make a audit every 3 months, create an audit every 3 months to see what are the entities being stored in the database. Can we clean it up if it's required? So this is how we can achieve some better performance in memory performance. And of course, in cloud, the moment you hit 1 TB limit on an Elastic Pool, the cost doubles if you have to go to next year. So you could actually reduce your cost as well. Okay, that's all I have time for questions right now. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have a few myself.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kautilya. This is very, very informative. Some of these tips, by the way, what I notice is commerce projects are a lot more complex than regular Sitecore marketing projects. There's a lot that goes into it, and I would say if you're a vendor who is coming in and implementing the solution and leaves, it's super important to make the client aware of all the things that they would need to do in Sitecore Commerce moving forward. I mean, you know it, I know, we work in the space, that's second nature to us. But when you start thinking about, kind of going back to basics and thinking about all these things, it's, the clients don't know about it. And then what ends up happening is resources get trained, let's say content authors, marketers, the people who work with commerce get trained, IT gets trained, developers, whatnot, and that's it. But then these things start coming out sideways, right?
Right. These are like the back end, someone who's actually worked on would know. So that's why I'm proposing you should have, an audit kind of thing, template for audit every 3 months, like check all these entities, get with the developer, get the statistics, like how many journals are there, what's the size of database on, maybe track the database every 3 months, the size of database. See which entities are actually increasing. Do you really need it? Do you need journals? Is any one of your tables growing huge in size? So things like that can actually be, a template can be created for audit of Sitecore Commerce, engine and database.
That's a good idea. Maybe it's time for us to create a Sitecore Commerce maintenance guide.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Good idea. So questions on the inventory. So this is the tricky part with store inventory, right? What is your experience of integrating with store inventory?
Right. So like you said, it's very tricky. You have to agree with the store. So not directly. So you're actually, the requirements you'd get, okay, we have store inventory and then online inventory. And then you have to start asking questions to them. Okay, what happens if I am purchasing 1,000 of it and store only has, 1,500? They would like to keep 1,000. They wouldn't want to sell 1,000 at one time. Things like threshold are very important in that case. Each store needs to have its threshold, like what's the maximum allowed quantity per order, and what's the threshold, where and the store will alert the storefront that it's running low in inventory. So things like that have to be managed. Actually, the requirements have to be written really quickly, because I've seen going into production, people come with crazy crazy ideas like, okay, can we not do it right now? I'm like, no, it's not supported right now because it's not built that way. So that is very important to have all the acceptance criteria, think wild and write acceptance criteria and see how it be. Even though you may not solve for all these scenarios, maybe like one off scenario, but just have it documented as a, have it documented that may be a phase 2 thing. You may not get right something right, from phase 1. So how do we improve on it is phase 2. And then of course, analytics is important. Like once you have, so one of the projects I worked on had like product ordered, stored on the cart. Like let's say I have ordered 100, product fulfilled from store was 90, and then there's a difference here. Why was not, why did the store not fulfill 100 even though it had it? Because it's their policy that no, we can't give all of the products to one person. So things like that, you need to have analytics and keep on improving how we can fine tune it. Maybe just an agreement with store.
That can get really complicated real quick.
Right.
Every store might have their own thresholds, their own rules.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was thinking about when you were walking through. I was like, man, this could get really complicated.
Right. It could get tricky. That's why you need to, you need to actually list out, this is what I'm storing, these are the scenarios I'll take care of. If there's anything outside of this acceptance criteria, it will require changes because you cannot be perfect on day one. I have actually, someone asked me before, okay, someone asked me like, if I place an order online, maybe it's 50, but it's ready for pickup, even ready for pickup. But when I went to store, they say it's out of stock. How could that happen? There were scenarios because the store had inventory on their end actually. So even though they thought they had 100, they had only 50 because they thought a box was there, but the box was broken. None of the products could be sold. So things like that can still happen, but this is the base framework. You have to fine tune it based on your requirements.
Crawl, walk, run. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually what you just touched on another question. What I was thinking about is, so we have to, ideally send that information, that order, and reserve that inventory as soon as possible. So ideally it would be an API call. Then you mentioned there's also email, there's FTP, right? So there's that lag that's going to happen. And the store could actually sell out of the inventory in the meantime.
Right. So not every store can afford an API call. That's what I saw because they wanted to go it maybe like 3 months from now, 4 months from now, they are building that framework. But right now they just want to start buy online pickup in store. So they went ahead with email, and some actually proposed, can we drop it to an FTP, an Excel file in an FTP, and every store can look at every 2 minutes or 5 minutes. But then the ideal way is API, of course, but not everyone is ready day one. So again, crawl, walk, run. You can change it to API when they're ready. Once they're ready.
That's true. That makes sense. Let's see. Well, those are all the questions. Oh, the customizations that you guys did in the storefront and the S6A storefront. Did you have to modify the view directly using the markup there, or did you use Scriven for that?
Oh, this is Scriven.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
what's your experience? What's your experience with Scriven and Commerce?
So it's really good when you know what you have to put there. But something like we had dynamically changing behavior on the storefront. Like if let's say $6.99, you get to pay in four installments here, like $150 each or $175 each. But if you select a variant, this needs to change here. Gets a little tricky with Scribon because this is actually computed when you load the page, and then Scribon dynamically updating some items here is not that easy. You have to invoke it. You have to go through a chain of things to invoke it. So it's like very straightforward. Yes, why not? But if like something on this page changes when I select this or this, that's where it gets tricky.
Makes sense. Any limitations that you've run with Scriven and Commerce?
So actually, we have a hot fix for it now. So what happened was a Scribbin sometimes on the heavy load could not perform scale well. So we have a hot fix. I think it came last month. I can paste it in the chat here. So, but other than that, it's been really good.
Awesome, excellent. Well, I don't have any other questions. Kautilya, thank you so much. This was super informative.
Thanks.
I'm sure listeners will find it very useful. This is very, exceptionally relevant these days in the times of COVID, when now stores are shutting down. We're in another wave. Hopefully it won't last long, but this is, this will be irreplaceable moving forward. More and more companies.
Right. It's getting in the habit now. It's becoming a habit. So
exactly.
It's going to be difficult to take it away.
Exactly. Well, excellent. So let's continue. Let's move on. So the next section, in the next session, I'll present on measuring digital content return on investment. Let me go ahead and pull up the screen. Okay. Let's see here. Let me move the windows around. All right. Okay, now let me know if you can see the presentation, measuring content ROI.
Yes, I can.
All right, excellent. So in the next about 30 or so minutes, I'll talk about measuring digital content ROI. So this is a switch. So we're switching more towards a marketing topic. So this will be important for anyone involved in digital marketing, digital content marketing, especially those folks who work with Sitecore products, specifically Sitecore Content Hub. So we'll start with a quick introduction. For those who just joined or watching this online later, as a recording, so my name is Vasily Fomichev. I'm a Senior Director of Solution Architecture at Altudo. Been a Sitecore MVP for the past 6 years. Spent over 12 years in Sitecore delivery, everything from small projects to global enterprise implementations. 6 years managing Sitecore practices, and really, I'm, at heart, I'm a technology MarTech really enthusiast. And spending quite a bit of time in Azure, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. A few words about Altudo. So that's the company that I represent. So we're a global digital marketing and technology agency focused on creating data-driven, personalized experiences. So lots of full-service digital agencies include similar services. So we're no exception. We cover marketing, experience, and technology, the main pillars. One thing I want you to remember when you hear Altudo is data-driven customer experiences. So when, let's say, other vendors or partners lead with theory and case studies, we build everything based on data. So the data comes first, and then experience and marketing and the strategy starts building on top of that, and then, of course, the solid technology to back that up. So we have over 500 projects delivered. We've been Sitecore partner since 2003. We're platinum level partner. We have fortunate to have 4 MVP awards on staff this year across all the categories: ambassador, technology, and strategy. Unfortunately, they removed the commerce category this year, the MVP commerce category. So we're back to ambassador, technology, and strategy. All right. So let's dive right in. The reason I started on this track, measuring content ROI, is because I noticed a lot of issues in the way that's currently being done. And one of the biggest problems, one of the age-old problems in marketing has been not knowing the part of the budget that's being wasted. There's an age-old saying in marketing, I know half my advertising budget is wasted, I just don't know which half. So that got me thinking, and I started looking into content ROI measurement, trying to figure out how we can do that right now with the tools that we have, because we do have the right tools to do that right now. It's a matter of figuring out how. So started off with a conventional way of measuring content ROI. And in traditional sense, in the offline methods, what we've been doing is we've been basing the return on investment on digital content marketing at the campaign level. So we would define the budget for a particular campaign. Let's say, for the sake of simplicity, there are no other variables. Let's say it's just a purely content marketing campaign. All we're doing is we're creating marketing content and we're promoting, let's say, a product or a service, and that's all we're doing. So we define the budget, we give that investment to, let's say, an internal team or an external agency. They run with it, they create the required content, and we take that content, we throw it at the web, we spray and pray, throw spaghetti at the wall, hope it sticks, and then at the end of the campaign, we come back and see how we did. Well, there's a lot of things that happen in between, and in the offline world, it's hard to trace those things. So we stayed at that level. We never try to drill in any further into what's happening when that content is created, what happens when users engage with content. We simply look at the end of the campaign at the revenue was generated, and we compare it to the cost of production. And of course, if the revenue is higher, then we did well. Well, there are lots of problems with that. The reason why we never really ventured into this space of diving into details is we somehow just got stuck in that mentality of the offline content marketing. To give an example, for instance, when let's say we're advertising through the offline channels, it's hard to draw a relationship or connection between a driver seeing a billboard on a freeway and then later that day that person going to the store and then picking up that product. So it's nearly impossible to draw those relationships and conclusions. So we simply gave up for the most part, right? And what we do is we spray and pray, we throw that spaghetti at the wall, hope it sticks, and then if it sticks and it works, then we try to repeat that same thing. And then we're also afraid to change things because we don't really know why it worked, but it did. So we're just going to keep doing that thing until it stops working, and then we'll try something else. So in the online world, though, things are very different. In the online world, we can create those connections. We can trace user activity. We can create those relationships between a user engaging with a piece of content that trace that user's activity all the way to conversion. So things are much different. But why do we want to go that route? You know, the classical way of measuring content ROI has been around for quite a long time, and it seems to have been working out. But, well, here are the problems that come with that approach. Hidden waste. What happens in reality when we put out the content on the web and across the digital channels, really, most of the time it's only a few items of all of the content of the entire content package that drive the engagement. And a lot of the time, the bigger portion of that package is really a waste, or it drives so little engagement that it wasn't worth creating it, in other words. But measuring it at the campaign level and not the individual content item level, we're unable to identify those problems. So as long as we sold more than we spent, things are looking good. The problem is we may have wasted most of our content marketing budget. We also can't identify content marketing opportunities. So because we can't tell which content actually worked and which didn't, we're blind to the existing opportunities in the market, in the content space. So we don't really know what content resonated with our users. We don't know whether we should produce more of this or that. We try to solve that with split testing, but that takes a long time to do that. We got to run multiple campaigns. We got to make multiple variations, within the test. We try to scale those tests, but again, it's a slow process. And then finally, it's hard to tie individual content spending to the revenue. It's hard to prove the content marketing ROI in general. It's nearly impossible to prove it in the offline world. However, it is possible to do in the digital world. But the problem is we're still unable to draw those relationships right now. And it's hard for marketing executives to prove what works and what doesn't, and prove that their content marketing efforts are actually contributing to the revenue. It's hard to draw that, even an indirect relationship right now. So here's what happens in reality. Here's an example, for instance. So let's say if we had a $3,000 budget. We throw that spaghetti at the wall, and then at the end of the campaign, we come back and we realized a $20,000 revenue. So at a high level, things are looking great. Right? We spent $3,000, we got $20,000 back. Again, for simplicity's sake, let's ignore all the other variables. But the reality is only two of those, for instance, asset A and asset B, would drive all the engagement, and the rest would either drive a very small portion or none at all. So that's the waste that we want to ideally eliminate. So why can't we measure that at the individual content level at this point? Well, there are two things that we need to be able to do. We need to be able to measure individual content production cost at the individual content level. So we need to know how much it costs us to produce each individual image, each individual video, blog post, social article, and so forth, every single piece of content. We also need to know how much each individual piece of content contributed to our revenue. Right? So once we know those two, then we'll be able to calculate the return on investment on every individual piece of content. Well, as I mentioned before, unfortunately, it's nearly impossible to do it right now, but how come? So what we've done is we've put both of those reasons through the process that's called the 5 whys. And the idea here is that if you have a problem that you need to dig into and figure out the root cause, if you ask why 5 times, you're almost guaranteed to get to the root cause of that problem. So that's what we did here. So we started with the content production cost. So why can't we measure that content production cost right now? Well, because there is lack of insight into each individual stage of production. Oh, well, although we do have tools that are measuring individual performance, let's say throughout the individual stages of the content production, there's nothing that brings all that together. There's not a place where we can go and see exactly what happened and what went into producing individual piece of content from the ideation stage all the way through distribution and eventually archival. Things look a little better if it's an internal team producing content, but it's a complete black box. If you have an AR or a creative agency that you work with, they may use their own systems. You have zero insight into that. So why is it that we can't put it all together? Well, because systems are disconnected. Okay, well, that makes sense. So why are they still disconnected? Why aren't they talking to each other? Because it's very expensive to integrate systems at that granular of a level. So why is it so expensive to do that right now? Well, it's because individual systems, they focus on delivering their specialized features. They want to build on their competitive advantage. And cross-functional collaboration, integrations are always going to come second at best after the features. So why so? Well, because specialized platforms, again, don't focus on integration, right? And traditionally, it's just simply not a priority for specialized platforms to focus on integrations. There are only a few players in the content marketing space that try to do that well, but even then, when we're getting to that level of granularity, it's really hard to align on even a simple thing like a measuring metrics, or a way to measure a particular metric among the systems. So we got to the root cause finally. So with the revenue attribution model, the things are slightly easier. The path was a little shorter. We're actually able to get to the root cause in 4 steps here. So why, we start again with why can't we measure content revenue attribution at this point? Well, there's a lack of digital content omni-channel attribution model. It's a mouthful, but essentially there's not a single model that for calculating content revenue attribution that can be applied across various systems. Okay, so why can't we come up with that model? Content marketing has been around for a long time. It's been around for ages, since the times of Furrow and the initial attempts on the offline content marketing, especially in the digital channel. It seems like that should be straightforward. Well, it's like I mentioned before, it's nearly impossible to create a uniform omni-channel model across the disconnected MarTech stack. If you ever worked with multiple analytics tools, this is a perfect example. You could have 2 analytics tools measuring traffic to your website, and you'll get different numbers. So it's even simple things like that we can align on. Not even talking about getting more complex with revenue attribution measurement. So why couldn't we do that? Again, let's keep going further. So MarTech stack does not support content attribution analytics in a consistent way. So if you look into some of the marketing tools and the CMP trend, the content marketing platform trend that's been getting a lot of attention recently in the past few years, they attempt to do that. However, everyone does it in their own way. Again, everyone's speaking their own language. In a way, they do that intentionally. Sometimes they do that because that's just how their system works, or this is how their ecosystem works. But again, it's nearly impossible to get them speaking the same language. So can we just integrate those two? Why can't we just connect them? We arrive at the same conclusion that actually product integration, again, and cross-platform consistency is traditionally not a priority for specialized platforms. So where do we go from here? We know that the problem lays in having a huge MarTech stack that doesn't talk to each other. There are 2 ways that we can approach this. We can either try to integrate. However, we know that's not going to work because it hasn't yet. If it was easy to integrate, if it was feasible, we would have already done that. We would have already had a uniform model that we could apply across the stack. We would have had integrations around this story. So we know this is not feasible. So another option is to bring the tools that we need to measure all these things into a single place. So unite all those tools, get them closer to each other and get them speaking the same language. So that might work, right? So that really, that's the only option we have, in other words, right? So what do we need to bring in this single space, in this centralized location? What tools do we need to be able to measure, 1, content production cost, and then 2, content revenue attribution? Well, we got to start looking at the content production lifecycle. And the important thing to remember here is that it is not what you see right now on the slide. In fact, this is the content production lifecycle that we're used to thinking of. In fact, this is so generic, it could really apply to any process, and that's exactly what we've been doing with content production planning. We've been applying the same template for everything we get our hands on when it comes to project management. It looks great on a project plan. It looks great when it's shown to leadership. Unfortunately, it does not work in reality. What really happens is what we call creative chaos. Let's take a look at an example here. Let's say you kick off a project, right? And that goes into strategy. We identify the content that needs to be produced. We start ideating, and then we, once it's all said and done, we kick that off to content production. Content gets created, then it goes in for review. It gets rejected. And then it needs a change, and that change needs to be aligned with project management. That goes to the project management, and that from project management gets back to strategy, because now strategy is affected. So all of a sudden, what seemingly was a straightforward and linear process becomes a mesh of communication and content flying around, and that's what we call creative chaos. If you ever worked with creative companies, you may have experienced the creative director running in the night before the release and changing things around. And that is something that throws the whole thing off. So what we need is, we need a platform that embraces this type of creative chaos, that embraces this chaos of communication and collaboration. So essentially, this centralized platform needs to embrace the lifecycle nature of creative chaos and content production. As we mentioned before, it needs to be a unified platform, so it needs to have all the tools that are involved in content production, from the ideation stage to the production, to distribution, archival, and finally reporting, to be able to measure the cost of production and then revenue attribution. Because we're bringing all these systems into one place, collaboration tools are going to be essential. We'll need to bring all of these groups together, so they'll need an effective way to talk to each other. And finally, to be able to measure the content revenue attribution, we need a feedback engine. We need something that will tell us how effective our content is, how engaging our content is, how much users use our content, how well they engage with our content. So Sitecore solved this problem by releasing Sitecore Content Hub. So Sitecore Content Hub is a relatively new product in the Sitecore stack, and it's based on 5 major pillars. There's a Sitecore DAM, which is a digital asset marketing system, which is a digital asset management system in the traditional sense. Allows us to manage various types of digital assets, from documents to just from static assets like documents and images to rich assets, getting all the way into interactive and interesting things around 3D or AR, VR, and so forth. MRM, Sitecore, which is the next pillar, this is our marketing tool set. So these are all of the tools that we're used to seeing on the project management, marketing resource management side or the project management side. So we have resource management tools here, we have task allocation, assignment tools, we have budget management tools, we have project plan creation tools, have our Gantt chart and so forth. So this is the piece that we're going to use to measure content production costs. As our piece of content, as our assets go through the production from ideation stage and on, we're able to allocate budget, tasks, watch the level of effort that's spent on each individual step in the content production lifecycle, and finally arrive at the total amount spent on producing each individual piece of content. Sitecore CMP Content Marketing Platform. This is one of the hottest topics in the content marketing space right now, digital content marketing space. This is, as I mentioned previously, a relatively new type of platform in the digital space in general. And what this pillar does is it provides a set of digital content marketing tools that we would need to effectively market our content online. So that combines tools for collaboration, first and foremost, for all of the teams that participate in content lifecycle. It provides flexible workflows. It provides flexibility for creating various types of content. So we're not just talking about digital content in terms of videos and static files. Now we're talking about copy, textual content. And then, of course, tools to syndicate that out, and then reporting tools to bring back the analytics around the content engagement. Then the PCM, Sitecore PCM, is a product content management tool. The easiest way to describe that, it's a PIM in the making. If the PIM is your source of truth for core product data, your PCM is a wrapper around that for adding marketing data on top of that core data. Sitecore Web to Print is the final pillar, and what that does, it allows us to create remarkably beautiful print material without having a designer on board, using either Adobe templates or through an integration with Chili. So where does the Sitecore Content Hub come in? Well, as I mentioned before, so now Sitecore Content Hub becomes our centralized place for managing content lifecycle. So content can either be created directly in Content Hub, and multiple users can collaborate together on a single article, and it works just like if you were, let's say, working on a Word document in OneDrive. You can see both users interacting and typing multiple users interacting with the copy, or we can bring content from the back office system. So effectively, Content Hub becomes this middle office platform that can either work as a source of truth for content or bring content from the back-end systems, walk that piece of content through the entire life cycle, and then syndicate that out to our digital channels. And then, of course, finally bring back the analytics around the engagement. So at this point, we're now able to measure the content production cost, right? So now we know what's gone into creating each individual piece of content. So how do we go about doing content revenue attribution? How do we measure how much each individual piece of content contributed to the revenue that came out of the campaign? Well, what we've done is we've built out this formula. You don't have to read into this. The easiest way to understand this is the revenue attribution model is built on the level of engagement around each individual content item. So what we're doing essentially here is measuring how much our digital users engage with each individual content. So the more engaging the piece of content is, the more its attribution to the total revenue. So its revenue attribution is in direct proportion to the level of engagement generated. And the way we measure engagement around content with Content Hub is using what's called an impact score. Impact score is calculated based on various types of engagements, and the types of engagements would depend on the channel where you distribute your content through. For instance, if it's a website, let's say an e-commerce website, and we're distributing our content, product content information to that website. Well, the things that users can do with our content is they can first and foremost view our content. They can add content to, let's say, a cart. They can click on a product image to enlarge it. So these are all of the interactions. These are all the different types of engagements that can occur around our piece of content on an e-commerce website. So each one of those interactions, each one of those engagements, we would call have a engagement value assigned to it. So if you're familiar with Sitecore, you may already be aware of the engagement value scoring that exists in there. And the way that engagement value is used in Sitecore traditionally is to assign a subjective value to an action that a user or visitor can perform based on the business value of that action, right? So it's a subjective measure that's indirectly tied to the business value of that action. So it's the same approach, same idea. We would work backwards from the business value to identify the individual value of each engagement type, right? To give you a simple example, for instance, let's say on our Instagram posts, we get 10% conversions. So in other words, we get a 10% conversion rate on all the traffic coming from our Instagram posts, right? So we know how much each individual sale is. Let's say we take the average sale amount. Using the 10% conversion rate, we can work out backwards how much each individual engagement around an Instagram post would be worth. And we convert that value into points, and that becomes our engagement value. So this might be a little confusing if you're hearing it for the first time, but just trust that all of this is automated. This entire formula and all this calculation is automated on our end using custom scripts that we built out. So this isn't anything that you would want to memorize or keep notes on. Just know that the content revenue attribution model is built on top of the amount of engagement that we can generate with each individual piece of content. So here's an example. Let's say if we have a total budget of $3,000 for our marketing campaign, right? And we decide to spend that on 2 images of equal value. So we spend $1,500 on producing each image. And again, we distribute it across our digital channels. And when the campaign is over, we go back and we calculate the impact score, and we see that asset A has an impact score of 127 points, where an asset B has an impact score of 10 points. We can clearly see which asset contributed to the revenue and which asset was really effectively is a waste of investment. Right? If we want to go through the specific calculations, the calculations would look similar to what you see below asset A and asset B cells. So we would start with measuring the impact proportion. So we'll take the 127 points, so the amount of engagement value or the impact score generated by each individual asset, and we divide it by the total campaign impact score value. So we get the proportion or the ratio of the impact score. So we now, knowing that ratio, knowing that percentage, we take that and we multiply it by the total revenue generated, and that's effectively our revenue that was generated by the content item. So again, this is an oversimplified scenario for the sake of explaining the theory behind this. You know, there are other things that go into the calculating ROI and calculating margins and so forth. But these things can be added and and customized. This again proves the concept of being able to now measure the return on investment on our digital content. So if we had to do that for both, now we would end up with a 5.2 positive ROI, and we would end up with actually minus 0.53 on the other content asset. So we can clearly see that asset A was the right investment, asset B was a wasted investment. So in the future campaigns, if we had to do a similar type of campaign again, what we'd want to do is obviously more of asset A and less of asset B. One thing that's also important to remember here is asset B in this case, although it was a wasted investment in this campaign, it may be a revenue generator in a different campaign. Context is important here. What worked in one context may not work in another, and vice versa. What didn't work in this context may be a killer in another context, in another campaign. So before archiving or deleting that piece of content, just writing that completely off, put it aside and split test it in another campaign, for instance. There were resources spent producing that content, so don't be too quick to discard that. So let's take a look at what that looks like in practice. Let's see here. So let me pull up a Sitecore instance. Kautilya, can you see the browser now?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Okay. So what we've done on our end is we've built out some integrations to help us measure the engagement around content that's distributed across digital channels. Content Hub out of the box doesn't come with that automation or these integrations. In fact, that automated calculation of the attribution model is also a customization that we've developed on our end. And we're currently working on expanding this. What I'd like to show you right now is an example of what this would look like if we were to try to bring the engagement around our assets from Sitecore and also LinkedIn, for example, a social network. So what I've done here, this is a Sitecore instance. I'm using a Sitecore Habitat, a famous Sitecore demo website that's integrated with the Sitecore Content Hub instance. Now, the Sitecore Content Hub instance here is slightly customized, so it may vary from what you would receive when you just first sign up for a Content Hub instance. But here in the project category, this is where we would go to manage our project tools. This is the MRM, the Marketing Resource Management piece of Content Hub. So this is where we would go to manage projects, specific jobs and tasks, resource allocations, and so forth. What I would like to do is focus on the CMP portion of Sitecore Content Hub, and that portion is located under the content drop-down tree. So what I'll do is I'll go into the campaign, and I've set up a sample campaign. I called it a health service provider update. So right from the get-go, actually even from the previous screen, you could see the impact score being shown for this campaign. So this is the amount of engagement that was generated around this campaign. Now, if we've actually done the due diligence and did a direct proportion and direct calculation to tie the impact scoring to the revenue, this could also be easily translated into the dollar value right on the same page. On the right side here, you see all the content that's involved in this campaign. So we have a mixture of emails, social posts, white papers, and so forth. Some are in progress, some are just in the ideation stage in the draft, and this post, it looks like, has been already approved. So in this column, you see the impact score that's associated with each individual content. So right from this view, you're able to tell what's actually contributing to the total engagement around this campaign, to the total impact score. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take the CCPA approval notification post, publish it to LinkedIn, and measure its effectiveness. What I'd also like to do is measure how much this particular asset, the CCPA logo, is helping me with my conversion. So I push the asset out. So I'd like to push this asset out to the website running on Sitecore and push out that post to the LinkedIn social network. So this is what that would look like. So once your Content Hub instance is integrated with Sitecore, it's simply as easy as updating a general piece of content. You would get a new button here with multiple images selected on it once the Content Hub is connected to Sitecore. And when you click it, you get a list of assets pulled from Content Hub that you can use. You'll get a list of approved assets that are ready to go, that have already gone through the approval process. Or for preview purposes, if you have a need to create a preview environment, you can pull assets from a particular stage in the workflow process. These workflows can be customized, so you can literally pull them from a different step in the process. So once you select the asset that you like to include, what you would want to do is create a public link for it. And when you create a public link, it gives you several options around the rendition variations that you'd like to create for this specific purpose. So you have a lot of flexibility here. You can modify the ratios, the dimensions, you can crop the image, you can create a specialized link, you can even specify the expiration date to go with that. So once that's created, simply click select, and then image would be inserted in your rich text editor. So that's what we've done with Content Privacy Act. So now, once you've added the image, simply publish it just like any other page, and it'll be shown on the web. So now, what we'd like to do is, every time this image is viewed, we'd like to bring that view engagement, or what we call reach, in Sitecore Content Hub back into the platform. So what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and refresh, and then let's go back into our Content Hub instance and take a look at the impact scoring or the usage analytics. So for individual assets, to view the impact score detail, you would click on the triple dots here from the listing page and go to usage. From the detail page, you can do the same through the triple dot in the top right corner. And what you get here is a view of the distribution channels. So here we can see that our image was pushed out to a corporate website. It's in a published state. And so far, it's generated 110 points of impact. Now, if we want to get more detail and dive deeper into what actually contributed to that impact score, we can click on that individual item, and it'll bring the specific metrics that went into the calculation. So it looks like our image was actually viewed 22 times. Let me go ahead and refresh the page. And then I'll refresh the page and we'll see the score incrementing. There were 0 clicks on that image, so no one clicked to zoom in on it. So using that calculation, we can tell that the engagement value of each image view is 5 points. All right, so let me go ahead and go back in. And now, as you can see, we're looking at 115 points just because I refreshed the page. So the custom beacon that we built out pings Content Hub back every time there's an engagement around an asset pulled from Content Hub, and that's getting reported on. So that's easy with Sitecore. So let's see what that looks like with LinkedIn. Again, I'm going to go back into the campaign. I'll go into the post that I'd like to push out to LinkedIn. Now, this is a custom content component that we created, content type that we created specifically for social posts, and it's a simple post with the link to where we want to drive our users, a simple intro copy, some hashtags, and that's pretty much it. So the image and everything will get pulled from that URL. So what we'll do is I'll push this piece of content through the workflow. Because I'm logged in as an admin, I can go ahead and approve my own post. And what Content Hub is going to do now is it's going to grab this post and push it out to my LinkedIn account. Okay. So if I refresh this right now, what I'll get, and for demo purposes, we left that field visible, is the post ID. So for traceability, for audit purposes, we can also keep that here in Content Hub. Let's see if that actually worked. So I'm right now logged in as a tester under my testing account on LinkedIn. And if I refresh the page, there we go. This is our post. So now this was the easy part. So what we'd like to do here is bring all of the engagements back into Content Hub. So we want to bring all of the likes, all of the comments, all of the shares, various types of engagements, right, that could happen around this post back into our Content Hub, right? So, oops, let's see here. So I'll go ahead and like this post, okay? So now what's going to happen is Content Hub will pull that like, and based on the engagement value that we've assigned to this particular type of engagement, it's going to recalculate the impact score around that post. So let's see if that worked. So I'm going to go back to this post and I'll pull up the usage analytics around that. And there we go. Now we have the impact score of 20. And again, we see that this post was pushed out to a personal LinkedIn account. Again, it's in the published state, and the impact score is 20 points. To get more detail, we click on that, and now we see exactly what contributed to that. We got a single like on that post. So we can see that now this like is valid a lot more than a view of that image, and it carries a higher point value. So if we go back to our campaign, now we see that the total campaign score has incremented to 30, and we can clearly see the reason for that is our CCPA, which is our CCPA approval notification social post. So as users continue to engage with our content, all of these types of engagements would get brought back into Content Hub, incrementing our engagement value and the impact score for each individual piece of content. So now what we've done is we've created a data-driven way for us to be able to measure individual content effectiveness. We can calculate the ROI if we really want to go that far, but at the very basic level, we now know what individual piece of content contributed to the campaign effectiveness and which one was a waste. What content works in particular context and what content does not work. And we can now, using this approach, strategically guide our content marketing investments in future campaigns and continue improving and tuning using data, which is hard to argue with, really. So now we've enabled our content marketing teams to apply data-driven strategy, and now we've eliminated content waste. We can now prove revenue attribution, and now we can clearly see the content marketing opportunities when they come up. And that wraps up the presentation. let's see. Do we have any?
Awesome. I do have one question. So the like on LinkedIn had like 20 points to it. Where is that configured? Like 20, comment 30 or whatever?
So that is that's configured right now in the automation scripts. So what we've done is
Okay. Each action has a value in the script itself.
exactly. So for simplicity's sake, for the demo. But what we would want to do is, of course, start configuring those things directly on assets.
Right.
And so each we would define each individual type in the various types of engagements that could happen, right? And then assign a value to those engagements. It's actually straightforward to do if we had to extend that. Let me jump back into our post that we just pushed out to LinkedIn. So if we go back here, usage, and this time around, I'm going to click on the edit button instead of the line directly. So if you're an administrator, you'll get this view. So now you can actually start making changes here directly, or if you're a little more technical, you can look at the JSON view.
Yeah, this is nice. Yeah.
So you can start making, so you can extend this model. So this is, we're getting a little technical here, but you can extend this model to carry more information. This is what Sitecore defines out of the box. This can be extended to define other types of engagements,
right.
And also other functionality. And we can expose that information through the fields directly on the asset. So we can bring these fields over here to the right side where only certain people would be able to specify.
It's adding the schema, right? Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Content Hub is exceptionally flexible. It's based on a graph database, so there's no limit.
No SQL.
Yeah, there are no relational database limitations that we normally see in legacy platforms. Really in Sitecore too. It's Sitecore content structure, for instance, doesn't allow us to create many-to-many relationships. So we have to come up with these tricky workarounds to create those types of relationships. We're in Content Hub, but that's easily done.
Yeah. Right. Are there any other questions? I do have one more.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so you said the connector that you build brings the data back to the Content Hub. How does it bring it? Like, is it like event hook, or isn't that like is it live? I saw you view that page incremented here in the Content Hub. So is it like pulling live data?
Yep.
It's aggregated at like, okay. Is there an option to like make it aggregated, like maybe once a day or something? Or is like, what happens in the backend here? Like, is it calling an Azure function or something?
It's exactly what it's doing. It's calling an Azure App Logic.
Logic, okay.
Setup. Logic App instance. In fact, Logic App instance is also managing the LinkedIn post publishing. So if we're getting into the technical detail, what we've done here is we're hooking into that event of approval, and we're pinging a Logic app, then that does a publish to LinkedIn. And then there's another Logic app behind the scenes that runs and checks activity around the posts using these IDs, and then brings the engagement back, every so often. And we can define how frequently we want those updates to come in.
That's nice, real time.
Yep. All right, well, I don't see any other questions. So that wraps up our final Los Angeles user group of 2020. There are lots of changes happening right now in the Sitecore community. There are lots of news coming out. Sitecore just released the news around or announced the new Sitecore Edge delivery, which is exciting. There's a version of it that will be sitting on top of Content Hub. There's a version that will that's created specifically for XM. It's the same product, but it can be, used with Sitecore Content Hub and Sitecore XM. Sitecore AI standard is coming out early next year, so that's going to be included with Sitecore 10 by default. It'll come out with Sitecore 10.1, but it'll backward support Sitecore version 10. So if you have Sitecore XP, that is definitely something you should be looking forward to. And of course, you have to be on version 10 or above to take advantage of that. So lots of interesting things happening. We're right now, our hands are a little tied in how much information we can release about all these products. However, we will be posting a lot more come next year as we get close to this, as we get permission for Sitecore to open up the content gates a little bit, and the next user group will be focused around these new products. So stay tuned. Look out for an invite if you're part of the Los Angeles meetup. Look out for a notification for the next webinar. We'll probably be looking at February, shortly after the products will be released, to start talking about them. So normally it's in March. So keep an eye out on that, and have happy holidays, and we'll see you next year.
Happy holidays.
Oh, look out
Merry
for
Christmas.
Yes, look out for the swag package. So everyone who sent me your address, look out for some gifts from Sitecore.
Let me send it now.
Yeah, don't forget. So thanks again, everyone,
Awesome.
and have a great evening, and enjoy the holidays. Bye-bye.
Thank you.